Admiral Vex of the Krell Empire studied the holographic display with barely concealed disdain. The blue-green world rotating slowly before him appeared unremarkable, another backwater planet on the outer rim of the galaxy. His intelligence officers had catalogued it as inhabited by a single species, bipedal mammals they called humans. "Show me the biological assessment again," Vex commanded, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. The hologram shifted, displaying anatomical diagrams of human physiology. Lieutenant Brock, his chief intelligence officer, stepped forward with obvious excitement. "Sir, this species is remarkably fragile. No natural armor plating, no venomous secretions, no enhanced bone density. Their bite force is pathetic compared to most predators on their own world. They're completely defenseless." Vex's serpentine smile revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. The Krell had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, each victory adding to their empire's strength. Most species either surrendered immediately upon seeing their battle fleets, or put up token resistance before inevitable defeat. These humans appeared to be even weaker than usual. "What about their technology?" Vex asked, though he suspected the answer. "Primitive nuclear fission, basic space travel limited to their own solar system, and crude projectile weapons that fire metal. Slugs. Sir, our personal shields can deflect their most powerful weapons without draining more than 0.01% of their energy cells." The bridge crew exchanged amused glances. Some younger officers chuckled openly at the prospect of such an easy conquest. Vex himself felt a flicker of disappointment. He'd hoped for at least a minor challenge to break the monotony of endless victories. Population? Approximately 8 billion spread across multiple continents. They're divided into numerous tribal factions they call nations, and spend considerable resources fighting amongst themselves. Classic pre-unification species behavior. This drew more laughter from the crew. Every galactic civilization went through a phase of internal conflict before achieving planetary unity. That these humans were still fragmenting their efforts made them even more vulnerable. Vex activated the communication array to address his fleet. 300 warships hung in space around the flagship, more than enough firepower to glass the entire planet if necessary. Each vessel carried enough Krell warriors to overwhelm any defensive force these mammals could muster. "Attention, fleet commanders," his voice echoed through every ship. "We have before us perhaps the easiest conquest in our glorious history. Initial resistance will likely collapse within hours of our arrival. Prepare for standard planetary subjugation protocols. Victory will be swift." The response was immediate cheers and battle cries from thousands of Krell warriors eager for another trophy world. Vex felt his own blood quicken with anticipation. Soon, another species would kneel before Krell superiority. As the massive fleet adjusted course toward Earth, Vex reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. These humans lived short lives, averaging less than 100 years. They were individually weak, politically divided, and technologically inferior. Their world would provide excellent resources and a substantial slave population for the Empire's expansion. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you. What the Krell couldn't know, what their sensors and probes had failed to detect, was the one quality that made humans truly dangerous. It wasn't their technology or their physical capabilities. It was something far more fundamental, something that had driven them to survive ice ages, plagues, and countless wars against their own kind. That it was their absolute refusal to surrender. When everything they loved was threatened, the fleet entered hyperspace, carrying Admiral Vex and his warriors toward what they believed would be their easiest victory. None of them suspected they were about to encounter the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced, not because humans were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were the most stubbornly, irrationally, magnificently human. The Krell fleet dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Earth's moon, their arrival sending shockwaves through every deep space monitoring station across the planet. Admiral Vex watched with satisfaction as primitive human satellites began frantically transmitting signals back to their homeworld. "Communications from the planet's surface, sir," reported Lieutenant Brock. "Multiple transmission sources, all broadcasting in different languages. They appear to be attempting contact." Vex activated the Universal Translator, a standard tool for communicating with pre-conquest species. The cacophony of human voices filled the bridge, desperate pleas for peaceful contact, demands to know their intentions, and what sounded like prayers in dozens of different tongues. "Pitiful," Vex muttered. "Broadcast our standard surrender terms across all their communication frequencies." The message was simple and had been refined through dozens of successful conquests. "Submit to Krull authority. Surrender all military assets and prepare for integration into the Empire. Resist and face complete annihilation." The response surprised him. Instead of immediate capitulation or panicked chaos, the humans went silent for nearly 6 hours. When they finally responded, it was with a single transmission from what appeared to be their most powerful nation. To the alien fleet came a calm, measured voice. "This is President Cole of the United States of America, speaking on behalf of the United Nations Security Council. We acknowledge your superior technology, but we cannot and will not surrender our world or our people. If you wish to take Earth, you'll have to fight for every inch of it." Vex blinked in disbelief. "Did they just refuse?" "It appears so, sir," Brock confirmed, checking his translation matrices. The message was clear and unambiguous. A few bridge officers laughed nervously, but Vex found himself intrigued rather than amused. In his experience, primitive species either surrendered immediately or launched desperate, doomed attacks. This calm acceptance of certain defeat while maintaining defiance was unusual. "Very well," Vex said. "Begin standard pacification bombardment. Target major population centers and military installations. They'll reconsider once they see our power." The first wave of Krull fighters screamed toward Earth, their plasma cannons charging for precision strikes, designed to break human morale without destroying valuable infrastructure. What they encountered defied every tactical projection. Instead of panicking civilians and scattered military forces, the humans had somehow managed to coordinate a planet-wide defense in just 6 hours. Surface-to-air missiles, crude but numerous, rose to meet the Krull fighters. Most were easily deflected by shields, but the sheer volume was unexpected. More surprising was what happened next. As Krull fighters engaged Earth's military forces, civilian populations didn't flee in terror as predicted. Instead, they organized. Factory workers began producing ammunition around the clock. Scientists shared research data across national boundaries that had been closed for decades. Children too young to fight helped distribute supplies, while elderly humans shared knowledge of defensive tactics from their own wars. "Sir," called Commander Tor from the tactical station, "we're receiving casualty reports from Fighter Wing 7. They've lost 3 craft to ground-based defenses." "Impossible," Vex snapped. "Their weapons can't penetrate our shields." "The humans aren't trying to punch through the shields, sir. They're using mass-coordinated strikes to overload the generators, then following up with concentrated fire on the unprotected craft." Vex studied the tactical display with growing unease. The humans were adapting to Krull technology faster than should have been possible. More troubling, they were doing it collectively, sharing information and tactics across their entire species within hours of discovery. "Increase bombardment intensity," he ordered. "Target their command centers." But the humans had anticipated this. Instead of centralized command structures, they'd shifted to a distributed network of smaller units that could operate independently. When one group was eliminated, others simply absorbed their responsibilities and continued fighting. Siege that should have lasted hours stretched into days, then weeks. Every tactical advantage the Krull had enjoyed on previous worlds seemed to work differently against humans. Their psychological warfare broadcasts were ignored. Their attempts to turn human factions against each other failed as ancient enemies. United against the common threat, most disturbing of all, the humans were learning. Each engagement taught them more about Krull technology and tactics. They began modifying their primitive weapons with salvaged alien components, creating hybrid technologies that shouldn't have been possible with their level of scientific development. "Admiral," Brock reported, his voice tight with barely concealed. "Worry, the humans have successfully reverse-engineered our shield generators. They're installing them on their combat vehicles." Vex stared at the intelligence report in disbelief. What had begun as the simplest conquest in Krell history was becoming something else, entirely something that resembled an actual war. 3 months into what should have been a 3-day conquest, Admiral Vex found himself facing something unprecedented in Krell military history: a stalemate. The humans had not only survived the initial assault, but had begun pushing back with increasing effectiveness. "Status report," Vex demanded as he entered the war room aboard his flagship. Commander Tor looked exhausted, his usually pristine uniform showing signs of the prolonged campaign. "Sir, we've lost 117 fighters, 8 destroyers, and 2 cruisers. Human forces have established orbital defense platforms using salvaged Krell technology, and they're coordinating attacks from multiple planetary locations simultaneously." The numbers were staggering. The Krell Empire had lost more ships to this single primitive world than in their last 20 conquests combined. Worse, human resistance was actually growing stronger as the conflict continued. "How is this possible?" Vex asked, though he dreaded the answer. Lieutenant Brock activated a holographic display showing human activity patterns across the globe. "Sir, we've identified what we believe is the core problem. Humans don't fight like any species we've encountered before. They're collectivist in the extreme." The display showed a complex web of connections spanning continents. "When we attack one human settlement, every other settlement immediately shares the tactical data. When we develop new weapons, they distribute countermeasures to their entire species within days. They're fighting us not as separate nations or groups, but as a single coordinated organism." Vex studied the patterns with growing unease. In every previous conquest, the Krell had succeeded by exploiting divisions within the target species. Political factions would compete for favorable treatment. Military units would surrender to preserve their own forces, and civilian populations would pressure their leaders to capitulate rather than face destruction. But humans seemed to operate on an entirely different principle. The more pressure the Krell applied, the more unified they became. "Show me the London incident," Vex ordered. The hologram shifted to display the British Isles. 3 weeks earlier, Krell forces had successfully occupied London, expecting the fall of such a major population center to break human morale. Instead, something extraordinary had happened. "Within hours of our occupation," Brock narrated, "humans from every other nation began providing support to the resistance fighters in London. Military supplies, intelligence, tactical support. Even volunteers willing to fight and die for people they'd never met from countries they'd never visited." The display showed supply lines stretching from North America, Asia, Africa, and Australia, all converging on the occupied city. When Krell forces tried to intercept these supply lines, they found themselves fighting not just British resistance, but coordinated attacks from human forces on every continent. "It gets worse, sir," Tor added reluctantly. "The humans in London didn't try to escape or surrender. They stayed and fought even when defeat was certain. They transmitted tactical data about our occupation forces right up until their last communications were cut. That data was immediately distributed globally and used to plan liberation operations." Vex felt something he'd never experienced in decades of warfare: genuine respect for an enemy. "And the liberation? Coordinated simultaneous attacks from human forces on 3 continents, timed to the second. While we were defending London, human saboteurs were destroying our supply depots in North America. Human submarines were attacking our transport ships near Australia, and human fighters were engaging our air patrols over Africa. We couldn't defend everywhere at once." The Krell military doctrine was based on overwhelming local superiority, concentrate maximum force at the point of attack until the enemy broke. But humans were forcing them to fight everywhere simultaneously, diluting Krell advantages across an entire planet. "There's something else, sir," Brock said quietly. "Our psychological warfare division has been analyzing human communications, and they've identified what they call the human paradox." "Explain." "Individually, humans are exactly as weak and vulnerable as our initial assessments indicated. They have short lifespans, limited physical capabilities, and they experience fear, pain, and despair just like any other species. But collectively, they become something else entirely. The closer they get to extinction, the more dangerous they become. Vex absorbed this information with growing dread. The Krell Empire's expansion had been built on a simple principle: superior. Individual strength and technology would always overcome inferior numbers. But humans had somehow turned their individual weakness into collective strength. "Sir," Tor reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth's surface. It's addressed to you personally." The hologram showed a human female, middle-aged by their standards, standing in what appeared to be a makeshift command center. Despite months of warfare, she looked calm and determined. "Admiral Vex," she said, somehow knowing his name despite never having met him. "I am Dr. Lisa Kim, speaking for the United Earth Defense Coalition. We know you expected us to surrender by now. We know your forces are superior to ours. But there's something about humans you didn't understand when you decided to invade our world." She paused, and Vex found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. "We're not fighting for territory or resources or even survival," she continued. "We're fighting for each other. Every human who dies defending Earth dies knowing that their sacrifice protects every other human alive. And every human who survives carries the memory of those who fell. You can kill us, Admiral, but you cannot break us. And eventually, that will make all the difference." The transmission ended, leaving the Krell command staff in uncomfortable silence. Vex realized with crystalline clarity that they had made a fundamental miscalculation. They hadn't invaded a world full of individual humans. They had declared war on humanity itself. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Vex faced a reality that challenged everything he understood about warfare. The Krell were losing. Not just struggling or meeting unexpected resistance, but actually losing to a species they had initially. Dismissed as PR, the turning point had come when human scientists, working with salvaged Krell technology, achieved something that should have been impossible. Dr. Kim's voice echoed through the Krell flagship's communication system as she delivered another of her increasingly frequent transmissions. "Admiral Vex, this is Dr. Kim of the United Earth Defense Coalition. We wanted you to be the first to know we've successfully reversed the polarity on your plasma cannon technology." Vex felt his blood turn cold. Reversing plasma polarity was an advanced technique that took most species centuries to develop. Humans had done it in 6 months while under siege. Our physicists collaborated with engineers from 12 different nations, sharing data in real time across secure quantum channels. "We developed using your own communication arrays," Dr. Kim continued calmly. "The result is what we're calling the Terra Cannon, your technology, improved with human innovation." The proof came within hours. Human fighters, previously outmatched by Krell technology, began engaging and defeating Krell squadrons with increasing frequency. The crude metal projectiles and primitive missiles had been replaced by sophisticated energy weapons that matched and often exceeded Krell capabilities. But the technology was only part of the problem. The real issue was how humans used it. "Sir," Commander Tor reported during the daily briefing, "human forces have begun implementing what they call swarm tactics. Instead of traditional formation fighting, they're using hundreds of small fast craft operating in perfect coordination." Vex studied the tactical display showing the latest engagement over the Pacific Ocean, where Krell doctrine emphasized individual ship superiority and formation discipline. Humans had developed something entirely different. Their fighters moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, each unit responding instantly to threats against any other unit. "How are they coordinating without detectable communications?" Vex asked. "We believe they've developed a form of quantum entanglement communication using principles they derived from our own technology," Brack reported. "But sir, they're not just communicating with each other, they're sharing sensory data in real time. Each human pilot can see what every other pilot sees, instantly." This revelation was staggering. The Krell had always prided themselves on superior individual warriors. Their aces were legendary, single fighters capable of defeating entire enemy squadrons through skill and superior reflexes. But humans had made individual skill irrelevant by turning Every pilot into part of a collective intelligence. The strategic implications were becoming clear as defeat followed defeat. Human forces could concentrate overwhelming numbers at any point of attack within minutes while simultaneously maintaining defensive coverage across the entire planet. They fought with perfect information and flawless coordination, turning their numerical advantage into an insurmountable tactical superiority. "Admiral," the communication officer announced, "we're receiving surrender terms from the humans." Vex straightened in shock. "Surrender terms? They're offering to surrender?" "No, sir," the officer corrected nervously. "They're offering us terms. For our surrender." The audacity was breathtaking. A species that 6 months ago had possessed no interstellar travel capability was now dictating terms to a galactic empire. Vex activated the transmission with morbid curiosity. Dr. Kim appeared on the hologram, but she was no longer standing in a makeshift bunker. Behind her, Vex could see what appeared to be a sophisticated command center filled with technology that combined human and Krell designs into something entirely new. "Admiral Vex," she began, "I'm speaking to you from Orbital Platform Terra, our first completed space station built with hybrid human-Krell technology. We're prepared to offer you and your forces safe passage from our solar system in exchange for your immediate withdrawal." The camera angle shifted to show the view through the station's windows, and Vex felt his heart skip a beat. The orbital platform was massive, easily the size of a Krell battlecruiser, and it wasn't alone. At least a dozen similar stations were visible in the distance, with more under construction. "If you refuse these terms," Dr. Kim continued, "we're prepared to begin offensive operations against your fleet using weapon systems you've never encountered. We've had 6 months to study your technology while developing our own innovations. We know your weaknesses better than you do." As if to emphasize the point, the transmission shifted to show human fighters moving information around the orbital platforms. But these weren't the primitive craft that had first engaged Krell forces. They were sleek, advanced vessels that incorporated the best of both technologies. "We don't want to destroy you, Admiral," Dr. Kim said, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been pity. "We understand that your species has followed a path of conquest because you believed it made you strong. But strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting what you love and working together to build something better." She paused, and when she continued, her words carried the weight of absolute conviction. "You made one critical error. When you chose to invade Earth, Admiral, you assumed that because we weren't the strongest species individually, we would be easy to defeat. But you never considered what would happen when the most cooperative species in the galaxy was pushed to the edge of extinction. Now you know." The transmission ended, leaving Vex staring at a tactical display that told the stark truth. The hunters had become the hunted. Humanity had evolved from prey to predator in the space of 6 months, and they had done it not by becoming more like the Krell, but by becoming more perfectly dangerously human. Admiral Vex stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching as the last Krell transport ships departed Earth's solar system. The retreat was orderly, disciplined, and utterly humiliating. In 8 centuries of galactic conquest, no Krell fleet had ever been forced to withdraw by a species they had intended to subjugate. The final negotiations had taken place aboard Orbital Platform Terra, with Dr. Kim serving as humanity's primary representative. She had been gracious in victory, offering medical aid for wounded Krell soldiers and guaranteeing safe passage for all retreating forces. But beneath her diplomatic courtesy lay an unmistakable message. Earth was no longer available for conquest. "Sir," Lieutenant Brack reported, "we're receiving final transmission from the human leadership." Vex nodded grimly. He had expected this, a final statement to mark humanity's transition from victim to victor. Dr. Kim appeared on the holographic display, but the setting had changed again. She now stood in what appeared to be a vast chamber filled with representatives from every human nation. Behind them, through massive windows, the curve of Earth was visible, unmarked by the devastation that should have resulted from months of warfare. "Admiral Vex," she began, "as you depart our solar system, we want you to carry a message back to your empire and to any other species that might consider Earth an easy target." The camera panned across the assembled human leaders' individuals. From every continent, every major nation, every significant population center that had survived the war. What struck Vex was not their diversity, but their unity. These beings who had been divided into competing factions just months earlier now spoke with one voice. Humanity does not seek conquest, Dr. Kim continued. We have no desire to build an empire or subjugate other species. But we have learned something important from this conflict. We are not alone in the universe, and not all of our neighbors are peaceful. She gestured toward a display showing star charts that extended far beyond Earth's solar system. We have used Krell technology to map the local galactic region and identify other species that might threaten Earth. We are prepared to defend not only ourselves, but any other species facing the same choice we faced, surrender or extinction. Vex felt a chill run down his spine. The humans weren't just claiming victory over the Krell invasion. They were announcing their emergence as a galactic power. To species currently under threat from aggressive empires, Dr. Kim addressed the camera directly. Know that you are not alone. Humanity offers alliance to any civilization willing to stand against conquest and exploitation. We have proven that cooperation and determination can defeat even superior force. The implications were staggering. If humans began forming alliances with other threatened species, sharing their hybrid technologies and tactical innovations, the balance of power in the galaxy could shift dramatically. To aggressive empires like the Krell, Dr. Kim's voice hardened. Understand that the age of easy conquest is over. Humanity will respond to any attack on our allies with the same determination we showed in defending Earth. We are no longer prey. As if to underscore the point, the transmission shifted to show the orbital defense platforms that now surrounded Earth. What had begun as crude adaptations of Krell technology had evolved into something far more sophisticated. The platforms were clearly designed not just for defense, but for power projection across interstellar distances. This is not a threat, Dr. Kim concluded. This is a promise. Humanity will defend the right of all species to exist free from conquest and exploitation. We hope for peace, but we are prepared for war. The transmission ended, and Vex found himself contemplating the magnitude of what had occurred. The Krell Empire had invaded Earth, expecting to add another conquered world to their collection. Instead, they had created something unprecedented, a species that combined advanced technology with perfect cooperation, individual compassion with collective determination. Sir, Commander Tor approached cautiously. What are your orders regarding the report to High Command? Vex considered the question carefully. How did one explain that the Empire's latest target had not only survived invasion, but emerged as a potential rival? How did one convey that humans had somehow turned their greatest weakness, their emotional attachment to each other, into their greatest strength? Tell them, Vex said finally, that we have encountered a species unlike any other in the galaxy. They are not the strongest or the most advanced, but they may be the most dangerous. They fight not for conquest or glory, but for each other. And they have proven that such motivation can overcome any advantage we possess. He paused, watching as the last Krell ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system under human control. Tell them that the galaxy has changed. Vex continued. There is now a species that will stand against empire and conquest, that will offer alliance to the weak and threatened. The age of easy expansion is over. As his flagship entered hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's emergence to the farthest reaches of the Krell Empire, Vex reflected on the lessons learned from their defeat. The humans had been right about one thing: strength was not about dominating others. True strength came from standing together, from protecting what you loved, from refusing to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. The Krell had discovered, too late, that they had not invaded a world of primitive individuals. They had declared war on humanity itself, and humanity had proven to be the most formidable opponent the galaxy had ever seen. Behind them, Earth's orbital platforms gleamed in the light of Sol, beacons of hope for oppressed species across the galaxy and warnings to any who would threaten the peace. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through an unbreakable refusal to bow to those who would conquer others. The galaxy would never be the same.